All right, everybody, welcome back to the Links Golf Club podcast. We're here each week to dive into what's happening with our club. It's episode 4, so we're still learning the ropes, and we'd love your feedback, good and bad, in the comments, or you can also hop into the member Discord and leave them there if you'd like. If you are a LinksDAO member, sign up on the clubhouse, follow along on socials, which are linked in the description below. Smash that subscribe and like button, on YouTube, as they say. And you can participate in all of these discussions and all of these votes. This is very much a participatory club. We want to hear from you, so make sure you've linked that email in Clubhouse so that we can share what's going on and also hop on a Discord and be a part of the conversation. Today, though, very exciting, very, very exciting. In May of 2023, we purchased Spey Bay Golf Course. It's located on the Murray Coast in northern Scotland between Inverness and Aberdeen. We brought on the renowned architecture team Clayton DeVries and Pont to spearhead the course's renovation. And in 2024, we also hired Bert McKay as general manager, who has been driving significant improvements to the club and course. So today we are thrilled to have Bert with us, along with David, Spey Bay's head greenskeeper, and they'll give us a behind-the-scenes look at what's been happening, what's in the works, and what is next for this beautiful course and our vibrant club. The excitement is palpable here. We're really excited. You're our first guests, Bert and David. So in episode 4, it's just been Cooper, Chris, and me. I think people will be overjoyed to hear someone else talk besides us. So thank you for taking the time to join and welcome. So to start, could each of you give the listeners, the viewers, a quick overview of your roles? Where were you before coming to Spey Bay? And sort of what does a typical day look like for you at the club?
Cheers, Greg. Great to have us on the show, and we're delighted to be here. So, a typical day in the life at Spey Bay, well, who knows? It does change from day to day. We are a small team, but I think given the opportunity just to get involved with both the members, with some of the changes that we're doing, and really just putting a stamp on something that's very different and cool out there. I started in golf as a golf pro back at Loch Lomond. I hate to say this, 20 odd years ago. So kind of grew up as a golf pro, and then laterally was spent the last 10 years in Northern Ireland at a links course as a general manager. So I get to use kind of both skill sets from there to bring over to Spey Bay and enjoy this. You know, you guys have been here. It's a great links course. It's a great part of the world. And it's just a fun place to be. So there really isn't a typical day. I mean, today I was serving teas and coffees, watching David do some work out in the golf course. And then tomorrow, I could be out there with a tour operator. So I think that's the kind of the real fun that we have here as a team, that there's such a varied role. That's the fun of it. I'm sure David has changed his role dramatically over the last little while as well.
I'd like to say there was a typical day to day, but most days are very different, to be honest. I started my career up at Castle Stewart. I was an apprentice up there, and then formally moved to Elgin, where I gradually worked up the ladder to become course manager at Elgin. Well, that's where I was before coming to Spey Bay. And like Bert says, we're quite a small team, so every day is different. I mean, one day you could be cutting the fairways, next day you're changing the holes. One day could be bright sunshine, the next day it's snowing. So it's a wide variety of tasks out there. We're a team of 3, so there's a lot to do. But yeah, very excited about the project and everything so far.
So let's start with some highlights from the past year. Bert, why don't you walk us through some of the biggest changes and developments at Spey Bay, sort of from this time last year, and kind of pick whatever time frame you want. But what are some of the biggest changes that have happened over the course of the last year at Spey?
I think, Greg, I mean, yourself and Chris were here early on in the journey. I think that the golf course has transformed from being neglected. I think it's always been a sleeping giant, but now it's just starting to wake up. And I think that's the beauty of it, that it's gone from being a little bit neglected and overgrown. And to dive even further back, in 1999, I played here in the Assistants Championships. I was just thinking about that. And my only memory of it was I had to hit 2-iron off every tee. And it wasn't because I was good with a 2-iron. It was because it was so tight back then. So to see it only get worse, not it's just getting tighter and unfriendly to let the golf course breathe and to give the players an opportunity to enjoy the golf course. I think that's been the biggest change. You know, we've taken out 6.5 acres of gorse last winter. You know, the fairways are 1.5 meters wider. So those are dramatic changes. You then look at how good the turf quality got over the last 12 to 18 months. And all of a sudden, you're playing a different golf course now since I started last October. But certainly even before that, I think some of the members that have been here for a number of years see these changes. I think then off the golf course, you know, I think some of the highlights have not even been golf related, if I'm honest. I think everybody enjoys the golf course and it's great to see it, but you know, we've built a new fire pit with a nod to the history. And I think that's just been a really cool place. I mean, you three gents played 72 holes in one day and you're sitting out there after 36 having a burger and a beer, just enjoying the scenery and watching the world go by. I think some of those things are very, very cool. And then even having our own lager, I think having the Spey Bay lager, as much as I enjoy a beer, I think that there's just not any other golf club that I know really has their own lager, has their own gin. So I think doing some things, just a break from the norm, but that just fits in with what we are. And I think that journey that we're going on and doing these kind of cool events, obviously the US are still suffering a little bit after the shock defeat that they had in the Ryder Cup. You know, Coop still is, you know, trying to dry off his tears, etc. But, you know, even that event there, you know, you bring in 35, 40 people together from around the world to have some fun at Spey Bay, you know, so they're the kind of the highlights for me, just seeing people smile and having a laugh and doing it at Spey Bay, which has not been on the map for many years, but is definitely getting there now.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you brought up the Ryder Cup defeat because for those of you who weren't aware, we had a Ryder Cup event a couple weeks ago now, and it's almost like the United States didn't show up. No offense to the U.S. players that were there, but Europe so resoundly beat the United States side that I think there's probably still discussion of whether or not we'll do another one. I think it's almost like it's over at this point. Just kidding. We're doing one in the United States, and we will be enlisting David to come over and set the golf course up to the U.S. sensibilities. So be on the lookout. Follow this space, as they say. What about you, David? Some highlights, you know, big changes you've seen, just kind of, you know, special memories over the course of the last year.
I think I'll just kind of reiterate a little bit what Bert said as well. The course, I mean, I remember the first golf ball I ever hit was on the first tee at Spey Bay. That must be about 20 years ago now. And I remember where the course was then. And when I started roughly at the same time as Bert. And I remember being out there on my first day, going around the course thinking, what done? I mean, the greens were 50, 60% moss. It was insane. Like, neglect is the only word you could use. Which was really unfortunate to see because I remember where it was at one time. But it gave us a clean slate, if I'm honest. That gave us an area to start with. It was like, right, it can't really get any worse than this. So as far as condition of the turf, so anything we really do is going to improve the golf course. Even just frequency of cut, just by mowing things more often was going to improve the quality of the surface. I probably can't give you one specific highlight. There's a couple of them. I think in January, February, we pulled out 28,000 square meters of gorse. That was quite a highlight because at the end of the day, gorse is a weed, and we all know, like Bert says, the golf course was very tight. So to just see the stuff coming out was a highlight. That was quite a delight to see that coming out. Again, sand going back out there and seeding all these areas, these new areas that have been the great undulations that have been covered over with gorse for a number of years. But the main focus for me and my team this year was the greens. Like I say, they were 50, 60% moss, and we tasked ourselves at the beginning of the year to try and reduce the moss by maybe 20, 25%. We thought we would be doing well. We've put roughly 1,000 kilo of fescue in the greens this year. We've seeded them 4 times. We've got on around 150 ton of top dressing on the greens now. And I would say we're probably down to about 5% of our green is now got little bits of moss in it. Far more good grasses in the greens now. A lot of fescue has came through, and yeah, you look back at pictures where we were and where we are now, and it doesn't even look like the same golf course. It doesn't look like the same golf green. So I'm over the moon by what the team have achieved this year in regards to the surfaces.
Yeah, we were on our last, or maybe second to last community call. We were asking people who were at Spey Bay for the Ryder Cup or come to other events, like, what the highlights were. And that was the consistent answer. It was like the condition of the course and specifically of the greens from like people that came to the welcome event last year or an event this year. I think we heard that like 3 or 4 times too. So like, certainly rings true. And yeah, I mean, I was definitely seeing it myself when over there a few weeks ago. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is a huge surprise. I mean, if you went to one of the early events and you haven't been back this year and you plan on going next year, you are in for a delight. Great work, David and team. Let's sort of now look to the medium term here and what's in front of us and the winter work plan. So we just released this week a proposed 2024-2025 winter work plan at Spey Bay. Bert, could you walk us through the main goals for this winter, sort of delineate what the core projects are and what's motivating the decisions in the plan?
Ultimately, we've done this ton of work to open up the golf course, the 6.5 acres that we're talking about, that ultimately opens up some new holes, that there was new tees that were put in there. So I think probably the most exciting area of the golf course for me, and I know that the guys hopefully agree with me, is that kind of area at the back of the third green. It opens up a brand new 4th hole as a par 3, about 120 yards. And for those that were there for the Ryder Cup and follow us on social media, you'll be able to see some of the ornate stonework that David and the team did to generate that. And then it opens up the new 5th hole, opens up the new 15th. So ultimately, these areas were hydroseeded, all of the tees and walkways. So, from next year for early in the season, we will be playing some new holes on the golf course, which is incredibly exciting. And that's ultimately what the goal was. There are areas of the golf course that, and to be frank, there's bunkers that are not in play. There's bunkers that are in the wrong place that are, regardless of how much work that David and the team do, like a prime example is the bunker on 12. It's a great line off the tee if you're hitting a draw, but it constantly gets washed out. There's constantly stone in it, and it's not a bunker that's ever going to be in place. So by filling in some bunkers, it just means that it's going to take away time. It's going to actually increase the time the guys can put back into the surfaces by reducing some of these bunkers. And ultimately, like when we play a golf course in a forward routing, and if you just stand on a normal fairway and look back the way, you wouldn't see these bunkers on a normal golf course. That includes Spey Bay. So by reducing some of these bunkers, it means that we can get closer to our goal of being a reversible golf course. So removing a few key bunkers, the one on number 1 is like 100 yards off the tee. I hate to say it, if your ball's going in there, you're still not reaching the green, even if you pick up another driver. So, it's one of those bunkers it's an insignificant bunker. It penalizes the person that maybe just doesn't carry the ball that far. And it's just the wrong bunker for Spey Bay Golf Course. So we have picked out, 6, 7 bunkers there that we will be removing. And obviously when you remove bunkers, and I am not an agronomist and I certainly have opinions on it, as David will probably chip in and say, but I'm not an agronomist. What I would say is that, if we're going to hydroseed those areas, they're going to be out of play for a long period of time. So the part of this plan was reused in some of the product that we have on site and reallocating it. So the area that was in front of the clubhouse, we had maintained for the second half of the season to a decent height. So it's turf. And that means when we remove the bunkers, we can reuse that turf without having to buy in new turf. By replacing the bunkers, filling them in, creating the nice undulations and turfing over, it means that they're going to be in play next year pretty quickly. We're not waiting for a grow in and lots of GUR and more sanded areas. which would just be crazy, and it would just only stall the process. So that area out there has been a great asset to us. Ultimately, we're going to have to go in and oversee the walkways and some of the reversible areas into the greens, but that's not going to affect the short term of getting onto this new routing of the golf course. As I mentioned earlier on, that new wall on 4 is incredible. When we did our hollow core at the back end of the season, we pulverized the cores, mixed it with seed and sand, and those areas are now actually already popping through green. So those areas should be in play fairly quickly, and it's a credit to what David and the boys have done and the volunteers. We're very fortunate here, Greg, and it'd be remiss not to even mention the volunteers that we have member-wise that have given up a lot of time just to supplement David and the boys by lifting the cores, helping even the tractors through the period of removing the 6.5 acres. We had members as well as some of our own staff helping in other areas, so it's a huge help. But then ultimately, this area at the front that we were talking about is going to have no turf on it. And I think it gives us an opportunity to build a bigger putting green. Right now, we have a 3-hole putting green it's not fit for purpose. It really doesn't mimic the greens out there. The turf quality is poor. It's too small. And if you're anything like me, chipping a ball across it, you'd be taking the next person's shins out. It's that small. So by getting a bigger putting green out the front, we create a new exit off the golf course. We create a new larger putting green that's more in keeping with the turf that we have out in the golf course. And then we have the opportunity to create this Himalaya putting green at the far side, just for a bit of fun. You play 18 holes and maybe it's a tied match and you can go out there and have some fun around 9 holes. So yeah, it's an exciting winter, Greg.
Absolutely.
Maybe sorry to interrupt, Greg, but it's maybe worth just reiterating kind of the long-term plan too, because I know we mentioned up front, we've bought the course, we've worked with the architecture firm Clayton DeVries and Pont, so that's Mike Clayton, Mike DeVries, Frank Pont, and the larger crew at CDP. But what we've worked on is a long-term master plan for turning Spey Bay into a reversible 18-hole golf course, meaning we can play it in the existing direction today, which is more or less kind of a counterclockwise loop, but then also play it in reverse. So doing a clockwise loop, which uses more or less the same greens, but, kind of teeing off from, in the backwards direction. So, if you're starting off the course, you're going towards the 17th green, down the 18th fairway is the first hole. And so that's, there's a lot of work that goes into that, obviously kind of a reconfiguration of some of the holes. But, we've been really impressed by the work and kind of the vision that CDB put forward throughout that process. And, just want to reiterate, this is kind of a step on that journey, right? So like last winter, we took out a course, opening up a lot of the course, enabling some of these holes to play in both directions. This is kind of the next step, that Bert alluded to, of some of those reverse approaches, some of the different routings of some of these holes to step towards that final vision, which will still be a ways off to get to something that's fully final. But just want to reiterate for those that kind of haven't heard that story before, we are kind of working on something I'd say is very unique and, is going to be an interesting process to step into and see kind of how all of it gets revealed over time, right? New holes, new routings, new directions, and all of that, even apart from some of the awesome stuff that's going on, like the proposed putting green in Himalayas area and all of that good stuff. So sorry to interrupt, but I thought that was useful context for folks.
Never apologize. Never apologize.
And I think there's some, as you say, Chris, some of the tees, the new tees in particular, that new 5th tee is at the highest point of the golf course. It makes what was a very poor tee shot and poor hole on 5, all of a sudden exciting tee shot where you're standing up there and you can see the whole property. It gets the tees that are going to be in play next year also get out the monotony of, you come off the green, you turn right, you come off the green, you turn right for the first handful. You've got that new 17 tee, which I think is going to be unbelievable, that you come off 16 green, you go right, all of a sudden you just see the ocean and the vistas that it creates. And I just think that it opens up the whole property. So I think that the new tees, I don't want to undersell it. And I just think we have to emphasize how good the golf course is going to be, even with these handful of new tees and new holes.
We took a video when we were out there for the solstice of the very beginnings of the reversible routing. We show a little bit of that new fifth tee. We show some of the coastline up there with how 17 plays as well. That's also on our YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can find it. If not, at Links Golf Official, you can check that out. This is all really exciting work. Obviously, the progress that's been made has been awesome. Witnessing it and getting to travel over there a few times has been super great. With this winter work plan, the community's been discussing it, kind of reading through, digesting it the past couple of days, and commenting. And here we are recording this on Thursday on Common, our request for comment platform. And a couple of the questions have been around the size of the putting green. So I know, Bert, you mentioned the existing one is very small. I agree. 2 or 3 people, it starts to feel crowded. About how big would you say this putting green is? How many people, would you envision being able to interact on it at once? How does the chipping area compare to what the options are like today? And then another question was about practicing the sand. Some people will be taking long flights over from the US. They want to practice a couple of sand shots before they get out on the course, kind of get used to it. What are the options for that like today? And I know Chris kind of responded to one of the comments there as well, that maybe in that practice area between 18 and the sea, if there could be a sand area in that section. So a couple of questions there, and I'm going to go back on mute while this Philadelphia Streets Department continues tearing up my street.
You definitely need a set of headphones for the work that you've got going on there. Look, I think that, and maybe in the diagram it's maybe worded wrongly. I mean, we say chipping green. This is just short grass. This is like a runoff fringe, if that's what you want to call it. If that just clears that up, it's more of a fringe area that gives us options to do a number of things. You were asking earlier on, Greg, about traditions and things that we're doing at the club. I mean, one of the traditions is this nearest the gin, and it's established that the tee shot is beside the fire pit because we all stand around there and have a cocktail. So this fringe area is like a reversible fringe where you can chip balls from there onto 18 for nearest the gin, or you can turn around and chip balls onto a putting green. David and I are very similar in the fact that we're laughing. There's so many golf courses around the world that say that this is a putting green. You're not allowed to chip balls onto it. There's a lot of red tape around that. Yeah, there's 18 holes on a golf course that balls are getting fired in from 100 yards, never mind chip shots. So all we're doing is saying, like if you want to hit some chip shots, chip from there. We've no issues whatsoever. But it's not a chipping green. It's not a chipping. It's just short grass is the only way I can describe it. It's short grass fringe that leads into a nice putting green that would be very similar to the putting greens that we have on the golf course, that then leads into this Himalaya style putting surface. Look, we would hope to have about 9 holes on each on the standard putting green and 9 holes on the Himalaya. So look, you could have 15, 20 people in this area putting and it not feel overcrowded. So there is space there. And as I say, it's maybe the word. And again, look, this is where this led to the confusion. It is just short grass. That's all it is. But I mean, for sizes wise, David, do you want to jump in and try and explain the sizes, obviously, compared to what the greens we have just now?
Yeah. So the first question would be, well, why do we need a new putt? Well, the putting green that we have is roughly, I'll try and keep things in American measurements. It's roughly 1,600 square foot. So it's quite small. It's got 3-4 holes in it. You put 3 people on it and all of a sudden you're putting across each other and all the rest of it. It gets a little bit confusing. It's far too tight. The big issue from my point of view with the putting green that we currently have is that it's built on hardcore. So it was an area that used to be just an area that people hung around outside the changing rooms. And I think some soil might have been thrown down at one point and they threw some grass seed and all of a sudden it was getting cut by the green floor. If I take a hole out of that, about 4 inches under the surface, it's hardcore. So it's very, very difficult to get fescue to grow on that putting green because it's got a far far longer root. So what wants to grow on it is POA, weed grasses that are shallow rooted. Now, what do you want from a putting green? Well, you want your putting green to be as similar to the golf course as possible. Well, because our greens aren't built on, we don't have 4 inches of soil and the rest hardcore. That causes this inconsistency. So we've got 2 problems there. We've got one that it's built on top of hardcore, and we've got another one that's too small. So the area outside the clubhouse, directly outside it, which is just grass, it was just be getting cut for no other reason than the fact that it's right outside the clubhouse. We've measured that with a little bit of an extension where the Himalaya section would go, it's going to be roughly just over 10,000 square feet. Now, 2/3 of that 10,000 square feet will be very similar to our greens on the golf course. So you guys know that our greens on the golf course don't have crazy undulations on them. They're very subtle undulations. When the speed of the green starts to get up a little bit, you do feel that slight undulations, but they're not like a modern links golf course, which has the crazy undulations. It's a very old links golf course, hence the reason it has subtle undulations. And to add a fun element was what we call the Himalayas. Now, we called it the Himalayas just basically purely so that you paint a picture in your mind of what it would look like. It's very undulating. We also have to keep in mind, we need to be able to maintain it. So our mower needs to cut it. We need to be able to spike it. We need to be able to spray top dress, all these things. You could build something absolutely ridiculous, but then you can't maintain it. At the end of the day, we still want it to be the same height as our greens. So we want it to be one really large green, but 2/3, it'd be very obvious that 2/3 of it is the conventional putting green. And that bit over there is the fun, so, because who doesn't love having a bit of fun on a putting green when you've got undulations, when it doesn't matter out in the golf course because, you're not counting your shots in the putting green. And like Bert says, the chipping area, it was probably worded wrong. We shouldn't have called it the chipping area because that makes it look like you're chipping within that area. It's an area of fringe approach, if you like, that would be cut at that height to chip onto the putting. Now, again, reiterating what Bert said, it kind of annoys me a little bit that golf clubs get stuck in this tradition of, you can't chip onto the putting green. Well, why not? You chip on every other green. Why not treat it exactly the same as greens on the golf course? So it just, we've all said it in the past, and we've got things to say that we're breaking tradition. Well, there's another point of let's break a little bit of tradition. There is an element, is it too small? Is it going to get, chewed up and all the rest of it? Well, that's the way I look at it is like a tee. So the par 3 tees, for instance, they take quite a pounding from divots and things. So we would kind of look at it similar to that. It's big enough that it would be about the same size as some of our par 3 tees. So, we're going to be constantly putting in divot mix and seed in there, spiking it, feeding it, all the rest of it, just like we would do to any other tee. So I'm not too concerned that it's going to get chewed up. It's not like you're taking a full swing out of that area and taking big divots. You might take a few scuffs. That's going to be pretty much where we're at. But yeah, this time of year is the exciting time of year for me. This is where I get really excited about my job, if I'm honest. Sitting on a moor all summer cutting grass can get a little bit boring. So this time of year is, in my opinion, if we're not changing things, we're not improving things. That's the way I live my life. I know some people get a little bit nervous by changing things, but if you keep things the same, nothing's getting better. So when I'm looking at projects like this, it's interesting to actually sit and listen to Bert about the bunker removal and then moving on to the potential putting green. Because for me, when I'm looking at winter work, we always try to interlink everything. So we could say, right, let's go fill in that 6, 7, 8 bunkers, and it costs us X amount of £1,000 on turf. Well, we have turf there. So it's always been resourceful in what we have. Let's not just scrape that turf off with an excavator and put in new stuff. If we can use it, let's use it out there. Hence the reason halfway through the season this year, we started to maintain it for this potential project, saving us money, basically. Why are we going to go and spend £2,500, £3,000 to turf 6 or 7 bunkers when we have the turf here? And what that does is that leaves us with just the cost of buying the turf for the area that we've removed the turf from. So all these jobs all kind of link together. It's also the same as the potential double green at the 7th and 10th. So the old putting green that's there, like I said, the turf isn't quite up to standard as our greens purely because of the depth of soil we have. So there's a bunker there that needs filled in between the two of them. There is a little bit of recontouring needed there because there's a couple of really sharp contours with the greens more just won't be able to cope with. So a little bit of recontour there, and we take the old pattern green, put it there, and we're halfway to already having the double green in place. Or maybe a little bit of fringe here and there that needs to be cut down to green's height. But the greens sit so closely together, it almost doesn't make sense to have them as a double green. So again, it's not like we're just going to scrape up the old pattern green and dump it somewhere. It's going to get used out in the golf course.
That's great.
Yeah, it's kind of acting like a mini nursery, or it's turned into that, or we're able to use it for that, which is pretty cool. And we, one of the things that's been amazing seeing the process over the past few years is like we're able to use a lot of the on-site resources, right? Like we're able to find sand on site and excavate that, use some of the existing turf, use a lot of the stone, like even some of it from the old hotel, right? To, build things like walls of teachers and everything else. I know, David, you've talked about even some of the areas, like I think the kind of old 6th green by the 11th fairway, being able to cut that down and use that as both a source of new sand and topsoil as well as potentially a turf nursery. So it's been very cool, at least for me, to see a lot of those pieces, kind of how all the, jigsaw puzzle fits together. And I mean, you and the team have been able to be very resourceful, I'd say, for sure. And kind of, move all the pieces around such that they come together to a very good whole, which has been very cool.
Yeah, and that's what's great, I think, as well, that, over at the Greenskeeper sheds, all this stone was stored and there was gorse bushes growing out of it and everything. It's been there for years. And I'm told it's the stone from the old hotel that burnt down that was saved and never really found a use for it. So, we get all that out of there, and there's quite a lot of it. So get all that out of there and make a feature out of something like this. There's no point in it sat over there just getting overgrown. And like you said as well, where the 6th green used to be isn't actually on the plans for the reversible. So we did a testing there, and we're going down, 10 inches, and this stuff is, for Spey Bay, it's quite unheard of. There's no stones. It's basically a mix of sand and soil. And yeah, I dug 10 inches down and didn't find a stone. It's the most remarkable thing I've found yet.
That's great. Cooper, Chris, any other questions either that you've seen come up in the discussions around the proposal, or questions for Bert and David before we sort of move into the last segment here, which is more about the future?
I will ask one question. It's kind of tangential to these areas that are kind of more casual. Some folks who visited mentioned that they'd like seating to kind of be augmented. So we currently have those benches out there. We've got picnic table style seating. The idea of Adirondack chairs was raised, for the area by the clubhouse. Kind of sit, watch people come in, watch people chip and putt, as well as potentially benches out on the course in areas like near the 7th tee box, for when you're reaching the end of your out and back walk, you can take a break and enjoy the views. Not saying we need to earmark this proposal specifically today with that stuff. I think that's something that could be considered. But what do you guys think about seating, since it seemed to be a popular topic so far in responses to the work plan?
I love the seats that you're talking about. What I would be very cognizant about is that when I see them over in Florida or I see them in Chicago, you have a very safe climate. It's either wet or dry. You do not have the salt air. You don't have the corrosion. You don't have, so anything that we have in Spey Bay has to be weatherproof. That is the one thing I would say. And that wouldn't be the typical train of thought. I love an ornate bench. I love those seats. But would I have them at Spey Bay? They would need to be made of either recycled plastic or something really, really hard wearing, that we're going to get a number of years out of, because I can guarantee you, I mean, those seats, I don't know what they are in the States, but they're like £180. What's that? $225 a seat. You wouldn't get one season out of them over here because the air is just too salty. It would just corrode, and you would just be throwing money down the drain. You'd be better standing with your wallet open out in the first tee and letting it blow. Although Cooper, in fairness, I heard you kind of did that in the Ryder Cup with the lack of points. But he's going red there now. But
Brutal.
Genuinely, I do love a good seat. And in fairness, I think that we need to be very in keeping. And I think that's why when you look at some of the links courses up around here, they use a lot of the recycled railway sleepers. You would see a lot of that style of furniture because they're very hard wearing. You're wanting, ultimately, you want 5 years minimum out of these things. I know and David will probably attest to this, he's probably sick of sanding benches and repairing them. Because and when he was at Elgin, he was at a Parkland course, but they just deteriorate so quickly and they take up so much of a greenkeeper's time. So I love them, 100% love them, but I think that we have to be very cognizant of our furniture moving forward, that it has to be element proof. And I mean by kind of the salt air and the corrosion. I don't think that sitting in Philadelphia, you would honestly, and I'm only saying that because I don't know where the suggestion came from. I did see it. I think it was, I remember that. There's R.W. Dennis, I think was gentleman put it in. And I thought it was a great idea, and I love the benches and I love the seats. I just don't think in that wood, they wouldn't last a year here. We would be spending $2,000 on seats that I would be sitting saying to Chris next year, I need another $2,000. Whereas if we could just pick the right thing the first time, it would last us for 5-10 years and take away the maintenance from the green staff. So 100% we need benches. I love a bench. I love a seat. I think we can do some quirky stuff though. That would be more in keeping with what we are here. If that answers your question.
It does. Another example of being thoughtful and trying to do things right the first time rather than throwing money away. So excellent there. I was discussing with another member the idea of doing a kind of separate fund that goes into benches that the members can raise money for, and doing something along those lines. So we'll keep exploring it. If you guys do come across any awesome materials or ideas for seating or benches, let them know. And for those of you listening, if you have questions, not just about seating, but about the winter work plan, what a day in the life at Spey Bay is, pop into the Discord. You can talk to Bert and David in there anytime. Keep in mind the time difference, so don't tag them too late here on US time. But I want to say how great it is to have you guys available for the membership, and that's one of the really cool things that we do here at Links and at Spey is wherever you are in the world, you can have a chat with these guys about your questions and ideas. So just wanted to plug that, and that link is down below. Feel free to chime in. It's not something that you just need to watch or listen to as a podcast. Get involved.
Absolutely. Chris, you got anything else before we go into the next section?
Nothing on the current plan, but maybe, just bridging the gap to the future. So we've obviously worked closely with Clayton DeVries and Pont on the overarching master plan and how we're stepping through it, and our agronomist, Chris Haspel, on, what we have going on with the turf and the conditioning and others over the past couple of years. But so how does the work for this winter kind of tie into the longer term plan? And just be a little further ahead. So, okay, we know what we're thinking about right now, but what are you thinking about beyond that, either for this season or just next steps in the future? And how does it all tie together?
I think for me, it's easy to, it can be too easy to go full blown. We need reverse. And when you do that, like what I felt last winter when we pulled out all that gorse and put all that sand back in, it was all chaos. Like there was diggers everywhere. There was tractors going everywhere. It's easy to then miss out the small things that need done and the weaknesses that we have. And for me, the putting green, the size of the putting green was a big weakness for us. It's okay day to day when you just have a few members playing, but when we have an event on or an open on and there's a lot of people here, that's when you really feel it. You feel like this is a real weakness of ours. We've got tees out there that are a little bit uneven in places purely because of the age of them. As far as tying together, like we talk about there's 7 new tees out there, and we keep talking about that, we'll be able to play them forward next year, but actually every one of that tees, when you turn round, that is actually a tee as well for the reverse course. So for instance, the new tee at the top tee that Bert was talking about at the 5th, when you turn round, it's a par 3 back to the 3rd. So, these things tying together, it is quite easy to think, well, it would be exciting to play these next year. And it's very exciting. But they are also there in a specific position. So they're used as a reversible as well. Don't get me wrong. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the reversible golf course and how it's going to work from a greenkeeper's point of view with X amount of tees, X amount of greens, and these tee markers moving about all the time. And I'll forget whether it's forward or reverse or what are we doing today, Bert?
And I think there's a lot of exciting things to even look at. I mean, even as simple as a scorecard, all of a sudden you play a forward routing and a reverse routing, and we have the guys coming in a 2 weeks' time to remeasure the golf course and reslope it because of the changes that we're making. But, you then go into the finer detail, the really fine details of, course signage. You're going to have the headache of 2 ways. Even we've talked about the benches. Is a bench at the back of the 18th tee the right place for it? Well, it probably isn't, because when we go reverse, it's going to be in the way for the next tee shot. So I think there's a lot of really clever things, course furniture wise, and the really small details that still need figured out. And we're not going to, I'm definitely not going to sit here and say we have all the answers, because there's so very few golf courses in the world that are doing what we're doing. But I think that's the exciting thing with it. And I think that's the one thing, if anybody that comes over here will see the excitement, not only on the golf course, but from the staff as well. And I think that's the overriding thing is, and maybe way back when you asked me the question about, what have we been doing during the winter, there's events that you gentlemen have all been at, and I'm sure most people that are watching this have been at this season, and they would have seen David in clearing glasses and serving coffee, and some of the greenkeepers have been out serving beers on the golf course. On the flip of that, they may have seen me cutting greens, they may have seen Andrew pulling out gorse, and they may have seen some of the other staff burning gorse, etc. So I think because it is such a tight-knit group that we have here, and a tight-knit staff that are happy to work across all areas, I think that's another huge exciting thing that's happening this season, that as the golf course grows, the team's growing, and we all get to know each other a little bit better as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just speaking personally, like as a member, someone who's coming to the course for, events, the time of the year and whatnot. I mean, one of the most fun things thus far, and I think it will continue to be true, is like every time I come, there's something significant that's new or interesting, or, courses have been playing the same and so on. Both, over the past year, there's obviously been like a step change in conditioning, like the course is just playing better in a much better condition. But also, obviously, a ton of gorse removes, the course has opened up quite a bit and so on. We're going to see, another step change when we all get there next spring, summer. Anyone who's visiting next year, they visited this year, they're going to be playing new tees. 5 holes are going to be essentially new holes, right? And, and that's in addition to, I'm sure, continued improvement in the conditioning, having the new putting course. And then, when we take the next step further, kind of stepping again towards the more final state of the forward routing, opening up reversible routing, like, we're going to be seeing new things out of the course, like, for the next few years, right? Like it's going to be kind of a fun journey for all of our members to kind of ride along with, right? Who's kind of experiencing something new about the course every time they visit. So I particularly think that's very cool. This winter will be the next phase of that. It's fun to see all the progress, and hope everyone else enjoys it too. But Greg, I think we probably covered most of our stuff here. Anything else you want to say at the end before we wrap?
I think just first and foremost, Bert and David, thank you for taking the time. You're obviously, as evidenced by the preceding 45 minutes, you're both very busy fellows. It's obviously later in the day there than it is here today. So just thank you for investing the time to share these stories with us and with our members so that, one, we can sort of just better understand what's happening, but also just get even more excited about the journey that we're all going on together. So just thank you very much for sharing the insights with us. Spey Bay's obviously in incredible hands, and it's really amazing to see the dedication and the vision that both of you bring to the table. So thank you very much. I think, Chris and Cooper, just sort of housekeeping, any other loose ends you want to wrap up, announcements you want to make, things you want to key listeners and viewers into before we close up shop here?
Once again, I'm going to plug, if you're made it this far in the video, make sure that you're staying up to date with all of our socials. You've signed up on Clubhouse for the mailing list. If you're watching this in the week after we've recorded it, go to Snapshot and vote on the winter work proposal. That link will also be here on the video. That'll be live from November 15th up until November 21st. So you can get your vote in, participate, and then, join the Discord, join the conversation, and get ready for the next one. We're doing a lot of great things in Scotland, but we're also have plans for the US course coming soon, which we're really excited about. And I know this call was mostly about Scotland, but Links members get benefits, around the world. So join today, ask some questions, come say hi. We're here to chat about it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for watching and for listening, and we will see you very, very soon with some more exciting updates from Links Golf Club. Take care, everybody.
Cheers.